Frank's first blind date in 3 years ended with a
It seems
question
your
that
date
made him
stood
want to
you up.
disappear.
Would you care
So
to join me?
the mother just left? Like, completely abandoned you both? He didn't answer. He placed 2 20s on the table, enough to cover both meals and a generous tip, then stood up. His son was waiting at home with the babysitter, and that was the only place he needed to be. But as he turned to leave, a calm voice came from the next table. "If you're free, sit here." Before we continue, I'd love to know where you're listening from today. And if you're new here, consider subscribing so you don't miss how this story ends. The morning had started like any other Saturday. Frank woke at 6, before his alarm, before his son. 3 years of single fatherhood had rewired his internal clock to anticipate needs before they became requests. He moved through the small kitchen with practiced efficiency. Eggs scrambled soft, the way Isaiah liked them. Toast cut diagonally, because somehow triangles tasted better to a 6-year-old. Orange juice poured into the plastic cup with dinosaurs on it, the one Isaiah refused to let him replace, even though the T-Rex's face had faded to a ghost. Isaiah appeared in the doorway, still in his pajamas, clutching a stuffed elephant that had seen better days. "Morning, little man." "Morning, Daddy." The boy climbed onto his chair, and Frank set the plate in front of him. They ate in comfortable silence, the kind that didn't need filling. This was their rhythm, their language. Words were optional when you knew someone this well. "Daddy? Yeah? You're going somewhere tonight?" Frank took a sip of his coffee. "Just meeting someone Uncle Derek knows. I won't be late." "A lady?" "Yeah, a lady." Isaiah considered this while chewing his toast. "Is she nice?" "I don't know yet. That's why I'm meeting her." "Oh." Isaiah seemed satisfied with this answer. "Can I have more juice?" Frank poured. He didn't mention that he'd rather stay home, that he'd only agreed to this because Derek had been asking for months, that the thought of sitting across from a stranger and explaining his life made his chest tight. Isaiah didn't need to carry that. The boy finished his breakfast and ran off to play, leaving Frank alone with the quiet and the weight of the evening ahead. The restaurant was nicer than Frank expected. White tablecloths, candles, the kind of place where people came to impress each other. He felt out of place in his button-down shirt, the one he saved for church and job interviews. His date was already there, blonde, early 30s, pretty in a polished way. She smiled when he sat down, and for a moment, he thought maybe this wouldn't be so bad. "Frank, right? I'm Jennifer. Derek's told me so much about you. Good things, I hope." "Of course." She laughed, a little too bright. "He said you're a carpenter? That's so interesting. Very hands-on." "I'm a woodworker. Custom furniture, mostly." "Oh, that's even better. So artisanal." Frank nodded. He ordered water. She ordered wine. The conversation moved in the way first dates do, circling around jobs and hobbies and surface-level questions. He answered politely, asked his own questions, tried to find something to hold on to. Then she asked about Isaiah. "So you have a son? That's amazing. How old?" 6. "And you raise him all by yourself? That's so impressive for a man. Most guys can barely take care of themselves." She laughed again. "Sorry, that came out wrong. I just mean, it's rare, you know? Especially." She stopped herself, but Frank knew what she'd almost said. Especially for a black man. He'd heard it before, in different forms. The surprise that he was present. The assumption that he was the exception. "His mother?" Jennifer pressed. "Is she involved?" "She passed away 3 years ago." "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." Her face shifted into practiced sympathy. "That must have been so hard. Was it sudden?" Frank's jaw tightened. "Yes." "I can't even imagine. So you've been doing this alone for 3 years? No help at all?" "My mother helps sometimes. And Derek. But no, like, partner? No one since?" "No." Jennifer leaned forward, her eyes filled with something between pity and fascination. "Can I ask what happened?" "With your wife." Frank looked at her. She meant well, probably, but she was asking him to unpack the worst day of his life over appetizers, to turn his grief into dinner conversation. "Car accident," he said. She was driving home from work. That's terrible. Was the other driver drunk? Did they catch them? There was no other driver. She hit ice. Lost control. Oh, Jennifer sat back, recalibrating. So it was just an accident. No one to blame. Frank didn't answer. There was nothing to say to that. The rest of the meal was awkward silence, punctuated by Jennifer's attempts to steer the conversation back to lighter topics. But the damage was done. Frank could feel the walls he'd built over 3 years standing firm, reinforced by every thoughtless question. He waited until she finished her entree, then signaled for the check. I should get back. The babysitter. Oh, of course. Jennifer's smile was strained now. This was nice. Maybe we could do it again sometime? Maybe. They both knew it was a lie. Frank stood up. The restaurant suddenly felt too warm, too crowded. He needed air. He needed to get back to Isaiah, to the apartment that smelled like crayons and laundry detergent, to the world that made sense. He was halfway to the door when the voice stopped him. If you're free, sit here. It wasn't a question, wasn't an invitation wrapped in social niceties, just a statement, simple and direct. Frank turned. A woman sat alone at a small table near the window. A book closed in front of her, a cup of tea growing cold. She wasn't looking at him with pity or curiosity. Her expression was neutral, almost bored, like she was offering him a seat on a bus rather than a lifeline. I'm fine, he said automatically. I didn't ask if you were fine. I said if you're free, sit here. She nodded toward the empty chair across from her. They won't rush you out, and you look like you could use a minute. Frank should have left. He had every reason to. Isaiah was waiting, the babysitter charged by the hour, and he didn't know this woman, didn't owe her anything. But something in her voice, the complete absence of expectation, made him stop. I don't even know you. I know. She picked up her tea, took a sip, set it down. That's kind of the point. Frank stood there, caught between the door and her table. The smart thing was to leave, the safe thing. He'd spent 3 years building a life where the safe choice was always the right choice. He sat down. The woman didn't smile, didn't celebrate her small victory. She just nodded, like this was exactly what she'd expected. I'm Elise. Frank. Fair warning, Frank. The coffee here isn't great, but the company's quiet. And despite everything, despite the awful date and the raw ache in his chest, Frank felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. He wanted to stay. That first conversation lasted 45 minutes. They talked about nothing important, the weather turning cold, a construction project blocking traffic on Main Street. The fact that the restaurant's dessert menu was surprisingly decent. Elise didn't ask about the blind date. Didn't ask about Isaiah or his wife or why a grown man looked like he was about to crack in the middle of a crowded restaurant. She just talked and listened and let the silence sit between them without rushing to fill it. When Frank finally stood to leave, he felt lighter than he had in months. Thanks, he said, for not asking anything. Elise looked up at him, her expression unchanged. You don't owe anyone your story, Frank. Remember that. He thought about those words the whole drive home. The babysitter reported that Isaiah had been an angel, had eaten his dinner, and brushed his teeth and gone to bed without complaint. Frank paid her, locked the door, and stood in the hallway outside his son's room, listening to the soft rhythm of the boy's breathing. He didn't owe anyone his story, but for the first time in a long while, he wondered what it might feel like to share it with someone who wouldn't treat it like a tragedy to be dissected. A week passed. Frank went back to his routine. Wake up early, make breakfast, drop Isaiah at school, work at the shop until 3, then pick up his son and spend the evening helping with homework, making dinner, reading bedtime stories. The rhythm was comfortable, predictable, safe. He didn't expect to see Elise again. The city wasn't small, but it wasn't huge either, and people's paths crossed all the time without meaning anything. So when he spotted her in the cereal aisle of the grocery store on Saturday morning, he told himself it was just coincidence. Isaiah saw her first. Daddy, that lady is waving at you. Frank looked up. Elise stood at the end of the aisle, her cart half full, raising one hand in a small wave. Not eager, not demanding, just acknowledging. He nodded back. That should have been the end of it. A polite recognition between two people who'd shared a strange moment once and would now go back to being strangers. But Isaiah was already tugging at his hand. Who is she? Someone I met once. Is she your friend? Not exactly. Isaiah considered this with the seriousness only a 6-year-old could muster. She looks nice. Before Frank could respond, Elise pushed her cart toward them. She stopped a few feet away, giving them space, and looked down at Isaiah. You must be the famous Isaiah. Your dad mentioned you. Isaiah's eyes went wide. He did? He said you're very smart, and that you have excellent taste in dinosaur cups. The boy grinned, his whole face lighting up. I have a T-Rex cup. His face is almost gone, but I still love him. That's loyalty. I respect that. Elise glanced at Frank. The bakery section here is about as reliable as that restaurant. Despite himself, Frank smiled. That bad? The muffins are acceptable. Barely. Isaiah looked between them, sensing something he couldn't name. Daddy, can we get muffins? Sure, little man. Elise nodded at them both and continued down the aisle. No lingering, no awkward attempts to extend the conversation. She was there, and then she wasn't, and somehow that made Frank want to see her again. 2 weeks after the grocery store, Frank took Isaiah to the park near their apartment. The boy was on the swings, pumping his legs with fierce determination, while Frank sat on a bench and watched. He noticed Elise on another bench across the playground, a book open in her lap. She wasn't looking at him, didn't seem to know he was there. Just reading, occasionally glancing up at the children playing. Frank debated whether to approach. The smart thing was to stay put, let her have her solitude. But his feet were already moving before his brain caught up. Mind if I sit? Elise looked up, unsurprised. Free country. He sat down, leaving a respectable distance between them. For a while, neither spoke. Isaiah shouted for Frank to watch as he jumped off the swing at its highest point, landing in the sand with a triumphant whoop. He's fearless, Elise observed. Too fearless sometimes. I spend half my life trying to keep him from breaking something. That's the job, isn't it? Keeping them safe while they try to destroy themselves. Frank laughed, a real laugh that surprised him. You have kids? No. Elise closed her book. Almost did. Once. Didn't work out. She didn't elaborate, and Frank didn't ask. He was learning that about her. She shared what she wanted to share, nothing more, and expected the same courtesy in return. They sat in comfortable silence for a while longer, watching Isaiah conquer the monkey bars. When Frank finally gathered his son to leave, Elise spoke again. I come here sometimes, when the apartment feels too quiet. It wasn't an invitation, but it wasn't nothing either. A month after they first met, Frank found himself pushing open the door of the same restaurant where everything had started. It was a Thursday evening, Isaiah at Frank's mother's house for the night, and Frank had told himself he just wanted some time alone. He wasn't looking for Elise. He definitely wasn't disappointed when he saw her sitting at the same table by the window. She looked up as he approached. Back for more punishment? Apparently, I'm a glutton for it. Sit down then. Misery loves company. They talked for 2 hours. About work. She was a nurse at a community clinic, the kind of place that served people who couldn't afford anywhere else. Long hours, difficult patients, the kind of job that wore you down if you let it. But she didn't let it. There was something in her voice when she talked about her patients, a fierce protectiveness that Frank recognized because he felt it for Isaiah. Why nursing? He asked. Because I'm good at sitting with people in the hard moments. Most people want to fix things, make them better. Sometimes you can't make it better. Sometimes all you can do is be there. Frank thought about the blind date, how Jennifer had tried to fix his grief by dissecting it, asking questions until she understood it well enough to file away. Elise didn't try to understand his grief. She just let it exist. My wife died 3 years ago, he said. The words came out easier than he expected. Car accident. Ice on the road. No one's fault. Elise nodded slowly. That's a specific kind of terrible. When there's no one to blame. Yeah. Frank wrapped his hands around his cup, grateful for something to hold. Everyone wanted me to be angry at someone. The city for not salting the roads. God. Anyone. But there was just nothing. Just bad luck. And you had a 3-year-old. He doesn't remember her. Not really. Just pictures. Stories, I tell him. Sometimes that feels worse than if he remembered. Elise was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried a weight he hadn't heard before. My fiancé died 2 years ago. Cancer. 8 months from diagnosis to the end, and I was there for all of it. She turned her cup slowly on the table, her eyes distant. Everyone said I was so strong, staying with him through all that. But I wasn't strong. I was just too scared to leave. Scared that if I wasn't there for every moment, I'd miss something. Miss him. Frank looked at her. Really looked. The calm exterior, the controlled voice. They weren't coldness. They were armor, the same kind he wore. After he died, Elise continued, I didn't know how to be around people anymore. Everyone wanted to talk about him, remember him, celebrate him. And I just wanted to sit somewhere quiet and not explain anything to anyone. That's why you come to places like this, the park, here. Places where no one expects anything. Yes. They sat with that shared understanding. Two people who had learned to carry their grief alone, finding unexpected comfort in someone who didn't ask them to put it down. I'm scared, Frank admitted. The words surprised him. He hadn't planned to say them, hadn't even fully formed the thought until it was already out. Elise waited. I'm scared that if I let anyone into our lives, into Isaiah's life, and it doesn't work out, he'll lose someone again. He's already lost his mother. I can't let him lose anyone else. Foff. So you keep everyone at a distance, to protect him? Yes. Elise nodded, like she understood completely. I do the same thing. Keep people away, because if I don't let them in, they can't leave. She met his eyes. The difference is, I know it's also to protect myself. Do you? Frank didn't answer. He wasn't sure he could. When they parted that night, Elise touched his arm briefly. This was good, Frank. Talking. But I want you to know something. Her eyes were serious. I'm not going to chase you. I'm not going to wait around while you decide if I'm worth the risk. I've already lost one person I loved. I won't spend my life being someone's maybe. 2. It wasn't an ultimatum. It was just truth, stated plainly. Frank went home that night and stood in his dark living room for a long time, thinking about maybes and what-ifs and the way Elise's hand had felt on his arm. The weeks that followed were a slow unraveling of Frank's carefully constructed walls. He and Elise fell into a pattern. Coffee on Thursday nights when his mother took Isaiah. Occasional texts during the day. Nothing romantic, just small observations. A photo of a particularly ugly chair at a thrift store. A complaint about a difficult patient. The mundane details of two lives that were beginning to orbit each other. Frank found himself smiling at his phone, something Isaiah noticed immediately. Who are you texting, Daddy? A friend. Miss Elise? Frank looked at his son, surprised. How do you know her name? You said it in your sleep. Frank felt his face grow warm. I did not. Isaiah giggled. Maybe, maybe not. He went back to his coloring book, but his eyes kept darting to his father. Is she your girlfriend? No, just a friend. Can she come to my birthday party? Isaiah's birthday was still 2 months away, but the question hit Frank like a punch to the chest. His son was already building space for Elise in his life, already making room for her at important events. We'll see, Frank said, the coward's answer. Isaiah seemed satisfied, but Frank spent the rest of the evening with his stomach in knots. This was exactly what he'd been afraid of. Isaiah was attaching, investing, opening his heart to someone who might not stay. He started pulling back, answered Elise's texts a little slower, found excuses to skip their Thursday meetings. When she asked if everything was okay, he said he was busy with work, with Isaiah, with life. She accepted the explanation without argument, but something shifted in her messages. A coolness that hadn't been there before. 3 weeks after Frank started pulling away, he came home from work to find his mother in the kitchen, making dinner. Isaiah was in the living room, unusually quiet, playing with his dinosaurs. That boy's been asking about your friend, his mother said, without looking up from the stove. The nurse. Her name is Elise. I know her name, he told me. Told me she's nice and she doesn't like pineapple on pizza, which apparently is very important. She turned to face him. He also asked me why you're sad all the time now. Frank's chest tightened. I'm not sad. Baby, I've known you your whole life. You think I can't tell when something's eating at you? She wiped her hands on a dish towel. What happened with this woman? Nothing happened. I can't do this, Mom. I can't bring someone into Isaiah's life and then have it fall apart. He's already lost so much. His mother's expression softened. So have you. This isn't about me, isn't it? She crossed the kitchen and put her hands on his shoulders. Frank, you've been a wonderful father, better than most men could ever be. But you can't protect that boy from every hurt in the world. And you can't protect yourself by hiding from everyone who might matter. I'm not hiding. Then what do you call it? He didn't have an answer. That night, after Isaiah was in bed, Frank called Derek. I need to talk. About the nurse? Finally. What took you so long? They talked for almost an hour. Derek had known Frank since elementary school, had been the best man at his wedding, had held him up at the funeral when Frank's legs wouldn't work. If anyone could tell him the truth, it was Derek. I can't do this, Frank said. I can't let someone into Isaiah's life. He can't lose another person. And what about you? Derek asked. When do you get to stop being just his father and start being a person again? Being his father is enough. Is it? Because, from where I'm sitting, you've spent 3 years trying to be enough for that boy, trying to be his whole world so he never has to feel the loss. But Frank, that's not healthy. For him or for you. I'm protecting him. From what? From love? From seeing his father happy? Derek's voice was firm but kind. You know what Isaiah's going to learn from watching you? That love is dangerous. That it's better to be alone than to risk getting hurt. Is that what you want to teach him? Frank closed his eyes. I don't know what I want. Yes, you do. You're just too scared to admit it. The call ended, but Derek's words stayed with him. Frank sat on the couch, staring at nothing, trying to sort through the mess of his own feelings. He didn't hear Isaiah come out of his room, didn't know his son was standing in the hallway, listening to every word. The next morning, Isaiah was different. He woke up early, made his own bed, got dressed without being asked. At breakfast, he ate everything on his plate without complaint and asked if he could help with the dishes. Frank watched him with growing unease. You okay, little man? Isaiah nodded, not meeting his father's eyes. I'm okay, Daddy. You sure? You're being very helpful today. I want to be good. Something in the boy's voice made Frank's heart stop. Isaiah, come here. The boy climbed into his father's lap, still not looking at him. Frank lifted his chin gently, forcing eye contact. Did you hear Daddy talking on the phone last night? Isaiah's lower lip trembled. He nodded. What did you hear? You said you can't let anyone be my friend, that I can't lose another person. A tear slipped down his cheek. I don't want you to be sad because of me, Daddy. I'll be good. I won't make you worry about me. Frank felt something break inside him, his 6-year-old son, trying to make himself smaller, easier, less of a burden, trying to protect his father from having to love anyone else. Isaiah, listen to me. He pulled the boy close. You are not a problem. You have never been a problem. I love you more than anything in this world. Then why can't Miss Elise come to my party? The question hung in the air. Frank didn't have an answer that wouldn't be a lie. Isaiah wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. It's okay, Daddy. I'm used to it. 3 words. 3 words that shattered Frank completely. I'm used to it. A 6-year-old shouldn't be used to loss, shouldn't be used to people leaving, shouldn't be used to watching his father close himself off from the world. Frank had thought he was protecting his son, but all he'd been doing was teaching him that love wasn't worth the risk. That evening, after Isaiah was asleep, Frank sat alone in the kitchen. The apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet that used to feel peaceful and now felt suffocating. His wife's photo sat on the shelf across from him. She was laughing in the picture, caught mid-joy at something he couldn't remember. She'd been the brave one, always pushing him to try new things, meet new people, take chances. If she could see him now, hiding from life behind their son, she'd be heartbroken. "I messed up," he said to the empty room. "I thought I was doing the right thing, keeping him safe, keeping me safe. But I'm just teaching him to be scared. I'm teaching him to be me." He sat there until the tears came. They surprised him. He hadn't cried since the funeral, hadn't let himself feel anything that deep. But now, alone in the dark, he let it all go. The grief, the fear, the loneliness he'd pretended he didn't feel. When it was over, he felt emptied out, but also, somehow, lighter. He picked up his phone and scrolled to Elise's contact. His thumb hovered over the message button for a full minute before he set the phone down again. Not yet. He had one more person to talk to first. The next morning, Frank woke before dawn. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about what he needed to say. The words had been forming all night, somewhere between sleep and waking, and now they sat heavy in his chest, waiting to be released. He got up and made breakfast, the usual routine: eggs, toast, orange juice, in the faded dinosaur cup. But when Isaiah shuffled into the kitchen, still rubbing sleep from his eyes, Frank pulled out a chair and sat down across from him. "I need to tell you something, little man." Isaiah climbed into his seat, suddenly alert. Children could sense when something important was coming. "I made a mistake," Frank said. "A big one, and I owe you an apology." The boy's forehead wrinkled in confusion. "What did you do wrong, Daddy?" "I was scared. I've been scared for a long time, ever since Mommy went to heaven. I was so afraid of you getting hurt again that I stopped letting anyone get close to us. I thought I was keeping you safe, but I wasn't." Isaiah listened with the serious attention only a child could give. "What I was really doing," Frank continued, "was teaching you to be afraid, teaching you that loving people is dangerous, that it's better to be alone than to risk losing someone. And that's not true, Isaiah. That's not the lesson I want you to learn. But what if people leave?" Isaiah's voice was small. "What if they go away like Mommy?" Frank felt his heart crack. He reached across the table and took his son's hands in his own. "People might leave. That's true. Sometimes they don't have a choice, like Mommy. Sometimes things don't work out. But that doesn't mean we should stop trying. It doesn't mean we should close our hearts and never let anyone in." He squeezed Isaiah's fingers gently. "I want you to grow up knowing that love is worth it. Even when it's scary. Even when it might hurt." Isaiah was quiet for a moment. Then he asked the question Frank knew was coming. "Does this mean Miss Elise can come to my birthday?" Frank laughed, a sound that felt foreign after so many weeks of heaviness. "I don't know yet. I hurt her feelings by pushing her away. I need to apologize to her too. Will she forgive you? I hope so. But even if she doesn't, I want you to know that I'm going to try. I'm going to try to be braver, for both of us." Isaiah nodded solemnly. Then he slid off his chair, walked around the table, and climbed into his father's lap, his small arms wrapped around Frank's neck. "I think she'll forgive you, Daddy. You're good at saying sorry." Frank held his son tight and let himself believe, for the first time since his wife died, that things might actually be okay. The community clinic where Elise worked was a squat brick building on the edge of downtown. Frank had driven past it 100 times without ever really seeing it. Now he sat in his truck across the street, watching the entrance, trying to gather the courage to go inside. He'd texted Elise that morning. Just 3 words. "Can we talk?" She hadn't responded. So here he was, waiting for her shift to end, hoping she would at least hear him out. He didn't have a speech prepared, didn't have clever words or grand gestures. He just had the truth, and he hoped that would be enough. At 6:10, Elise walked out the front door. She was wearing scrubs and a tired expression, her bag slung over one shoulder. She stopped when she saw him leaning against his truck. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Frank pushed off from the truck and walked toward her, stopping a few feet away. Close enough to talk, far enough to respect her space. "I'm not here to apologize," he said. "I mean, I am, but that's not all." Elise's expression was unreadable. "Then what?" "I came to tell you the truth, the whole truth, not the pieces I've been hiding behind." She didn't say anything, just waited. giving him the space to speak without making it easy. "I was scared," Frank said. "I've been scared since my wife died. Scared of losing someone again. Scared of Isaiah losing someone again. So I built walls. Told myself they were to protect him, but really, they were to protect me." He took a breath. "When I met you, those walls started to crack, and that terrified me, because letting you in meant risking everything. It meant Isaiah might love you and then lose you. It meant I might love you and then lose you, and I couldn't face that." Elise's expression softened, just slightly. "So I pulled away," Frank continued. "Told myself I was being responsible, being a good father. But I wasn't. I was being a coward, and worse, I was teaching my son to be a coward too." He thought of Isaiah's face that morning, the way the boy had said, "I'm used to it." The memory still cut deep. "My son heard me talking on the phone about how I couldn't let anyone into our lives. And the next day, he tried to make himself smaller, quieter, less of a burden." Frank's voice cracked. "A 6-year-old shouldn't know how to do that. Shouldn't have to." Elise's eyes glistened, but she still didn't speak. "I can't promise you anything," Frank said. "I can't promise this will work out, or that I won't get scared again, or that everything will be perfect. But I can promise that I want to try. I want to show my son that love is worth the risk, and I want to stop running from the one person who made me feel like maybe I could be happy again." He stopped talking. There was nothing left to say. Elise stood there for what felt like an eternity. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet but steady. "I told you I wouldn't wait around while you decided if I was worth the risk. I meant that." Frank nodded. "I know. And I told you I wouldn't chase you." "I know that too." Elise took a step closer. "So understand this. I'm not saying yes because you showed up with a pretty speech. I'm saying I'll think about it because I saw something in you that first night. Something real. And I don't want to walk away from that without giving it a chance. That's all I'm asking." She studied his face for a long moment. "I'll text you." Then she walked past him to her car, and Frank watched her drive away. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. For now, that was enough. 3 days later, his phone buzzed with a message from Elise. "That restaurant where we met, Saturday, 10 in the morning. You can bring Isaiah if you want." Frank read the message 4 times before he let himself smile. Saturday morning, Frank helped Isaiah get dressed. The boy had insisted on his favorite shirt, a blue one with a rocket ship on the front, and had spent 10 minutes trying to comb his own hair before letting Frank take over. "Is Miss Elise going to be there?" Isaiah asked for the 3rd time. "Yes." "Are you nervous, Daddy?" Frank finished smoothing down his son's hair. "A little bit. Are you?" Isaiah thought about it. "No, I think it's going to be good." "Why do you think that?" "Because you're smiling. You don't smile when you're worried." Frank looked at his reflection in the mirror. His son was right. He was smiling, and it didn't feel forced or fragile. It felt real. "Come on, little man, let's go." The restaurant hadn't changed. Same scratch tables, same bell that chimed when the door opened. Elise was already there, sitting at the table by the window where they'd first talked. She looked up when they walked in. Isaiah broke free from Frank's hand and ran toward her. "Miss Elise, Daddy said you don't like pineapple pizza. Is that true?" Elise laughed, a warm sound that made something loosen in Frank's chest. "Absolutely true. It's a crime against pizza." Isaiah's eyes went wide with delight. "That's what Daddy says too. Your daddy is a smart man." Frank reached the table and stood there, suddenly uncertain. Elise looked up at him, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. Then she nodded toward the empty chair across from her. "You going to sit, or just stand there looking awkward?" He sat. Isaiah was already chattering about school, about his friend Malik, about the book they were reading in class. Elise listened with genuine interest, asking questions, laughing at the right moments. She didn't try too hard, didn't force anything. She just let it be easy. Frank watched them together, his son and this woman, who had somehow become important without either of them planning it. The fear was still there, somewhere in the background. It probably always would be. But it was quieter now, drowned out by something stronger. Under the table, Elise's hand found his, her fingers interlaced with his own, warm and certain. Isaiah noticed. His eyes went wide, then crinkled with a grin. "Does this mean Miss Elise can come to my birthday party now?" Frank looked at Elise. She raised an eyebrow, waiting. "If she wants to," he said. "And if you're okay with it." Isaiah bounced in his seat. "I'm okay with it. Can we have pizza? Not pineapple, though." "Deal," Elise said. They ordered breakfast. Isaiah spilled orange juice on the table and laughed about it instead of crying. Elise handed him napkins without making a fuss. Frank watched them both, his heart full of something he'd almost forgotten how to feel. Hope. And Frank, for the first time in 3 years, let himself imagine a future that wasn't just about surviving. It was about living. If this story touched your heart, I'd love for you to stick around. Hit that subscribe button so we can share more moments like this together. And remember, the bravest thing you can do isn't to protect yourself from love, it's to let it in, even when you're scared. See you in the next one.